What would you say if a cop looked at you during a traffic stop and asked, "Is this your car?" If you answer the wrong way, you can hand the prosecutor a gift. One quick sentence can connect you to everything inside that vehicle. Hit subscribe right now because what I'm about to show you could save your case before it even starts. And tap like so you can find this again when a real stop happens. Most people have no idea that a simple ownership question is often not small talk. It's a setup question. If you say too much, the officer now has your own words tying you to the car, the bags, the center console, the trunk, and anything hidden under the seat. That matters later in court. Today, you're going to learn the safest words to use, the words to avoid, when to stay quiet, when to speak, and how to stop a normal ticket from turning into a fishing trip. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the pattern is always the same. Drivers talk because they think talking looks innocent. Then that talking gets repeated back in court like a confession. Now let's make this real. You get pulled over, your heart starts racing, the lights are flashing, the officer walks up calm and casual, then comes the friendly question. Is this your car? A lot of drivers think the safe move is to explain everything. They say, yeah, it's mine, but my cousin used it, or it's mine, but I didn't know what was in the back, or it's my girlfriend's, but I drive it all the time. That's the mistake. You start building the case for them. Here's the reality. The officer may already know who the registered owner is from the plate. The question is often about getting your mouth to do extra work. And once you add details, you can't pull them back. So here's tactic number 1, and it may be the biggest one in this whole video. When the officer asks, "Is this your car?" do not lie, do not argue, and do not start telling stories. You keep it tight. Here's exactly what you say. Officer, I'll provide my license, registration, and insurance. I'm choosing to remain silent, and I do not answer investigative questions. Word for word. Memorize that line. That answer does 3 smart things at once. First, you comply with the basic document part of the stop. That matters. In many places, you do need to hand over your license, registration, and proof of insurance. In some states, you may also have to identify yourself by name during a lawful stop. Second, you do not lie. Never lie to police. That can blow up in your face fast. Third, you clearly say you are using your right to stay silent on extra questions, and that part matters more than people think. Listen closely because this is critical. Staying silent is not always enough by itself. You need to say you are invoking your right. That idea comes from Salinas versus Texas in plain English. The court said silence alone may not protect you if you never clearly claim the right. So do not just stare at the officer and hope that counts. Use words. Say you are choosing to remain silent. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it shows you were not hiding. You were asserting a right. There is another case you need to understand. Hebel versus 6th Judicial District says that in some lawful stops, a state can require you to identify yourself. But that does not mean you must answer every question under the sun. The court's basic point was simple. Giving your name can be required in some places. Giving a full interview is not. That means your job is not to turn a traffic stop into a podcast episode about where you've been, who owns what, and why your cousin borrowed the car last Thursday. Bad way. Most drivers say, yeah, it's my car, but my friend had it earlier. Then that extra detail becomes a doorway to more questions and more suspicion. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I'll provide my license, registration, and insurance. I'm choosing to remain silent and I do not answer investigative questions." Then the officer gets the documents, but not the free statements. Watch what happens when you use that line. The whole energy changes. The officer may try again. He may act surprised. He may say, "Why are you being difficult?" But being quiet about extra questions is not being difficult. This is 100% legal when you are refusing extra investigative questions while still giving the required documents and obeying lawful orders. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection, because if the case ever reaches court, your silence gave them less to work with. And less is better when the goal is protecting yourself. Have you ever been hit with a question that sounded harmless during a stop? Drop a comment below and tell me the exact question. Now let's move to tactic number 2, because this is where drivers lose even after they stayed quiet. The officer says, "You mind if I take a quick look?" Or, "If you've got nothing to hide, you're okay with a search, right?" This is the trap. Here's exactly what you say. "I do not consent to any searches." Short, calm, clear. Say it once. If needed, say it again. I do not consent to any searches. Do not decorate that sentence. Do not say, "I guess that's okay." Do not say, I don't think so, but whatever." Do not shrug. Do not joke. Consent cases are ugly because courts often look at the whole moment and ask one question. Did you voluntarily say yes? That comes from Schneckloth versus Bustamante. In plain English, if the search happened because you gave permission, courts often treat that permission as the big issue. The police do not always have to prove you knew every detail of your right to refuse. That is why your refusal has to be plain and sharp. Here's the reality. Officers are trained to ask in a casual tone. They want the request to feel normal. Quick look, just making sure. Won't take a second, but if you say yes, your later court fight gets much harder. Your lawyer now has to argue your consent was not real, or it was pressured, or you did not understand. That is a rough fight. Former police officers have confirmed this works because a clean refusal closes off the easiest shortcut to a search. Bad way. Most drivers say, sure, go ahead, I've got nothing to hide. Then the search becomes something you allowed, and your best court argument may disappear. Good way. Smart drivers say, I do not consent to any searches. Then the officer has to rely on some legal reason other than your permission. And let me be clear about something. Refusing consent does not mean you are physically blocking anything. If the officer searches anyway, you do not resist. You do not pull the door shut. You do not argue with your hands. You simply repeat, I do not consent to any searches. That sentence matters because it protects the record. If your lawyer later challenges the search, your refusal can help show you never agreed. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. Consent is powerful, so your refusal needs to be just as powerful. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. A lot of searches survive because the driver talked too much before the search ever started. First, they admit control of the car, then they act nervous, then they say yes to a search. That is the three-step disaster. When you stay calm and refuse consent, you cut off a huge part of that path. Watch what happens in body cam clips when a driver says the line clearly. The officer often has to switch tactics because the easy route just closed. Now, tactic number 3. This one is about time. The longer you stand there talking, the more danger grows. Once the reason for the traffic stop is finished, the stop is supposed to end unless the officer has a real legal reason to keep digging. So after the ticket or warning part is done, here's exactly what you say. Officer, am I free to leave or am I being detained for a specific reason? Those exact words. Calm voice, no attitude. That line matters because of Rodriguez versus United States. In plain English, the Supreme Court said a traffic stop cannot be stretched out longer than needed for the traffic job itself, unless the officer has separate reason to suspect another crime. That means the mission is the traffic issue. License, registration, insurance, warrants check, ticket or warning, done. Not a bonus round where they keep you there hoping you get chatty or consent to something. Let me show you exactly how drivers mess this up. The officer hands back the documents. There's that little pause. Then the officer says, you got a minute if I ask a few more things? Most drivers think they still have to stand there. They don't ask if the stop is over. They just stay. Then they keep answering. Then 10 more minutes pass. Then a dog arrives. Then their whole night changes. If you ask, am I free to leave or am I being detained for a specific reason? You force the moment into the open. Bad way. Most drivers say, okay, sure, what else do you need? Then the stop keeps going and the officer gets more time to build suspicion. Good way. Smart drivers say, officer, am I free to leave or am I being detained for a specific reason? Then the officer has to either end the stop or state a reason to keep it going. This is 100% legal. You are not being rude. You are asking a basic question about your freedom. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it helps show when the traffic mission ended and when the extra investigation began, and that timing can decide the whole case. Let me show you exactly why this matters. If the officer has no real reason and keeps you anyway, that extra delay can become a big problem for the government later. But if you just stand there chatting, the record gets messy fast. 90% of drivers don't know what I'm about to tell you next. If you're still here, you're already ahead of almost everybody on the road. Hit like if you're serious about protecting your rights. Now, tactic number 4, and this one saves people from making the dumbest mistake of all. If the officer orders you out of the car, get out. Do not debate that on the roadside. Do not lock yourself in. Do not say you can't make me. Here's exactly what you say. I will comply. I do not consent to any searches and I choose to remain silent. That line keeps you safe and keeps your legal position clean. Why comply? Because of Pennsylvania versus Mims. In plain English, the Supreme Court said that during a lawful traffic stop, an officer can order the driver out of the vehicle. The court treated that as a small extra step tied to officer safety. So if you fight that command right there, you create a new problem for yourself. Your goal is not to win the argument on the shoulder of the road. Your goal is to go home and, if needed, fight later with a lawyer and a judge. Bad way. Most drivers say, no, I'm not getting out. You need a warrant. Then the stop turns physical, and now the focus moves from your rights to your resistance. Good way. Smart drivers say, I will comply. I do not consent to any searches, and I choose to remain silent. Then you obey the order while still protecting your position. That is the balance you want every time. Comply with lawful physical commands. Refuse voluntary talking. Refuse consent searches. Ask if you are free to leave when the traffic part is done. Those are 4 different moves, and together they stop you from feeding the case against yourself. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the drivers who stay calm and use short lines almost always do better than the ones who start arguing, explaining, and improvising. Now let's tie the legal pieces together in plain English so you actually remember them. Salinas tells you that if you want the protection of silence, say so clearly. Do not just hope silence speaks for itself. Hebel tells you that some places can require basic identification in a lawful stop, but that is not the same as forcing you to answer every extra question. Schneckloth tells you that if you consent to a search, that yes can become the center of the whole court fight. Rodriguez tells you the stop is not supposed to drag on forever once the traffic work is finished. And Mims tells you that if ordered out, you get out. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. None of these cases means cops can do anything they want. They mean there are lanes. Your job is to know your lane too. Here's a real traffic stop walkthrough so you can picture it. You're driving home at night. You get pulled over for a broken taillight. The officer walks up and asks for license, registration, and insurance. You hand them over. Then he asks, "Is this your car?" Wrong way first. You say, "Yeah, it's mine, but my cousin drove it earlier and I'm actually borrowing it from my girlfriend this week, and there might be a bag in back that isn't mine." That is a disaster. You just connected yourself to the car, added strange details, and gave the officer 3 new things to chase. Now the right way. The officer asks, "Is this your car?" You say, "Officer, I'll provide my license, registration, and insurance. I'm choosing to remain silent and I do not answer investigative questions." He looks annoyed. Then he asks if he can take a quick look. You say, "I do not consent to any searches." He goes back to his vehicle. A few minutes later, he returns with a warning and your documents. Then he says, "Hang on, I want to ask a few more questions." You respond, "Officer, am I free to leave or am I being detained for a specific reason?" Now the moment is clear. Either he lets you go or he says he is detaining you for a stated reason. Then suppose he orders you out of the car. You do not argue. You step out and say, "I will comply. I do not consent to any searches and I choose to remain silent." That is how you move through the whole stop without pouring gasoline on it. Short answers, no stories, no permission, no roadside debate club. Here's the reality. You are not trying to sound clever. You are trying to avoid becoming the main witness against yourself. And one more thing, do not think these lines are magic spells. If an officer already has a real legal reason to search, your words may not stop the search in that moment, but they can still protect your case later by showing what you did not agree to and what you did not admit. That matters a lot. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection when pressure is high and your brain wants to ramble. Next week, I'm breaking down what to say when an officer claims they smell weed coming from your car. Subscribe right now because that single claim changes everything in a stop, and most drivers answer it the worst possible way. So let's lock this in before you forget it. If an officer asks, "Is this your car?" do not lie and do not start explaining. Give the required documents and clearly say you are choosing to remain silent on investigative questions. If they ask to search, say, "I do not consent to any searches." If the traffic mission seems finished, ask, "Am I free to leave or am I being detained for a specific reason?" And if ordered out, comply physically while repeating that you do not consent and you choose to remain silent. That is how you protect your mouth, your time, and your case. Short words, calm voice, no stories. That one habit can change everything. Hit subscribe so you catch the next video on the weed smell claim. Smash like if this script just saved you from a future mistake. And drop a comment telling me which line you're going to memorize first. Stay safe out there.